What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the EOS Phoenix channel. Today is Saturday, July 27th. Happy to have you guys on board. We got a jam-packed show tonight. Trying to do a show every week, so if you like this content, if you find it valuable, please smash the like button, consider subscribing, and share with others. Please recirculate the link in the Telegram chats to invite others to participate in our discussion. So today in Phoenix, just before we start, want to do a shout out to everybody locally here in Phoenix who's tuning into the show, as well as all the people, all the global friends around the world. It was extremely hot today. I think it was around 115 degrees, if you guys can believe that. So definitely heating up here in Phoenix. We got about 6 more weeks of superheat, I call it, where it's just jam-packed hot, and then hopefully we get some relief. But yeah, glad to be inside, got the AC on, and everything's pretty good. So like I said, we got so much to talk about. I thought I'd actually start with a non-crypto topic, but one that I thought you guys would find interesting. And I stumbled upon this IMF working paper, which is titled Enabling Deep Negative Rates to Fight Recessions, a Guide. And what I found, I guess, so interesting about this, guys, is the strategy that is being explored by the central banks in terms of dealing with the next recession and really what they're planning to do. And so they kind of lay out their playbook in this working paper, and I thought I'd share it with you guys and get your thoughts and just make you guys aware of some of the things in the queue, if you will, because we are definitely in uncharted territory with the apparent growth and expansion we've had in the global economy over the past decade or so. And so a lot of central banks, IMF, are asking themselves, how do they deal with the inevitable slowdown and how do they prop the market up? And so there are some implications associated with what they're discussing here with cryptocurrencies and your traditional currencies as well, like the US dollar and other fiat-based currencies all around the world. And a lot of people who who watch the show who may not even have cryptos might laugh initially at crypto holders and think they're somewhat immune from the strategies of traditional banks and the volatility of value with fiat currencies. But in reading this paper, it kind of paints a different kind of picture. So I won't go through everything, guys, but I'll give you the clip note versions, if you will. And obviously, I don't want to get in trouble with the copyright stuff fun here. But they go on to talk about here that advanced country central banks have raised rates or are considering raising rates after nearly a decade of zero or near zero rates, which is sort of like what we have here in the United States right now. As you guys may or may not know, hey, Mr. Holm, how's it going? As you guys may or may not know, we got rates in the United States around 2.5%, which doesn't sound too bad, and it's actually not bad. But when you're going into a recession, typically you're seeing, as they call out here, and I'll kind of break this down for you guys, but it goes on to say here, downturns are likely to happen again, and currently there's relatively little room available to advance country central banks to fight them by interest rate cuts in the positive region. And a 500 to 600 basis point cut in policies have been typical during recessions. So what that means, guys, just to break it down, the 500 to 600 basis points, you can think of 1 basis point being 1/100th of a percent in terms of interest rates. So a 500 to 600 basis point is really saying a 5 to 6% cut in interest rates. And so you could see they throw a lot of terms to maybe cause people to get confused on how they read this. But essentially what they're saying is you really want to have a long runaway to reduce rates in a recession, and you're usually looking at 5%, 5 to 6%, which we observed during the last major recession here in the United States in the 2007, 2008, 2009 timeframe. We had a rate cut of that magnitude. It was up around the fives, and obviously it went to near zero. Now what we have is 2.5%. So they don't necessarily have the runway to reduce by 5%. They would actually hit zero before they're able to get the rate reduction they need to stimulate the economy. And so that's what this paper is identifying as a problem, and realization that they'll never get there. So what they're now proposing is, the central message of this paper is that with readily available tools, a central bank can enable deep negative cuts or rates whenever needed, thus maintaining the power of monetary policy to end recessions within a short time. Now, what I want to call to your attention, guys, is they talk about a couple different methods here on how to do it, but they also talk about the risk in doing this. And so I won't, again, bore you guys with the whole thing, but one of the things I want to stress here is that they say relying on banks for transmission of negative rate of return on paper currency reduces the implementation burden, so basically the ability for doing it, and political costs associated with negative rates. When working through banks, anything that would be a political problem for the central bank becomes a customer relationship management problem for the commercial banks. Commercial banks are likely to be better and more experienced in dealing with customer relation problems, even those with a new twist, than central banks are at dealing with grassroots political problems. After minimalist implementation, the central bank could leave the rest up to the private sector. One key aspect of bank transmission approaches is that the less the central bank does, and the more is done by commercial banks, the less new legislation is likely to be needed. What's up, BOGO? So what you guys can see there is they're basically saying if they were to implement this strategy, they would do it more at the local or commercial bank level versus the central bank level, and leave the political cost and pitchforks for the banks to handle. That's essentially what they're saying there. So relying on the pricing system to create a negative paper currency interest rate reduces the administrative burdens and drastic changes in the way people or institutions transact that would accompany quantity restrictions on cash. So what you guys have to think about here, and maybe I should have talked about this before even getting into this paper, but you could see the strategy is already being laid out. Now, you might ask yourself, well, why would I care about negative interest rates? It doesn't affect me, right? I'm talking to you, not pointing to myself, but you guys see what I'm saying. The reality of the situation is with negative interest rates, essentially what you're doing is if you have money in a bank, that money is getting eaten away from the negative interest rate. And if you guys know how banks traditionally work, typically banks would, for your deposit that you put in the bank, they would give you some amount of money. Now, today it's not a whole lot. It might be 1% or 2% if you're lucky. If you have a extravagant savings accounts or deal with the bank, you could probably have around 2%. What they're now proposing in this paper is basically to go negative. So meaning if you have money in your bank account, you would actually be charged money for storing the money in your account under this strategy that they're proposing under the next recession. So, and peep this, guys, peep this key word here. I just want to, again, bring it up to you guys. It says here, in our view, and I want to mention this, I want to make it very clear for you guys, and I encourage you guys to read this. In our view, central banks have only a short period to get their job done before getting blamed for a slow recovery, and even for a low natural rate. Hence, as compared to using mild negative rates for a long period of time, the use of deep negative rates for a short time has political advantages. So guys, what do you think about that? It sounds like they're going to go slow and deep. with a cut and trying to catch people slipping on it before they can prepare. And they also talk about here about communication tools on how they plan to roll this out. So again, guys, this is a new paper. I think this was published in April or May. It's not that old, guys, and this is from the IMF, straight from the IMF. And I do these hood talks, hood economics, if you want to call it that, to educate people out there, because a lot of people just think, well, the central banks, they know what they're doing and they got everything under control. And what this shows me is that they're looking for radical approaches to maintain the appearance of stability in the global financial system, which is kind of scary. And they're counting on people just maybe being distracted, right, with bread and circus, so that they basically are not paying attention to maybe what's going on. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I mean, that's what that's my question to you guys. I mean, are you game for that? Taking a penalty in your bank accounts? What's up, Renee? Good to see you. Yes, you are live with Phoenix, and we got an amazing community here. Thanks for stopping in, and if you enjoyed this content, consider hitting that like button. And as we go through today's talk, if you guys have questions, please add them in the chat, because I will be looking at that as we go through. I kind of made an outline today of things I want to talk to you guys about. That was top on my list, but basically because of the fact that, again, something like a Bitcoin, something even possibly like an EOS or Litecoin, is a hedge against these moves by these central banks, because this is what they have planned, guys. And again, and not to attack a lot of the boomers, but I think a lot of them who even watch this show, because they have a 401k or they have funds in their bank account, they just think they're immune to this stuff. But if these interest rate adjustments they're talking about really start to take place, it's going to really start to impact anybody with a pension, anybody with a 401k, anybody with money in the bank account, because you're basically going to get penalized every year you store this money. It's going to lose its purchasing power. And instead of the pension relying on the interest rate that it paid out on a bond, say, that it had invested, they're going to have to rely on the face value of these assets and possibly sell them off over time just to survive, which is kind of a sad thing, but that's what's going to occur here. So it's really not looking good. And again, I'd really encourage you guys to take a look at that and listen to guys like Max Kaiser, and Simon Dixon, because those guys know what they're talking about. And you definitely want to be on the inside scoop of the going-ons, if you will, the happenings of what they got planned, or what they got in store. So I just want to bring that to your attention, guys. So any thoughts on that, let me know. We're going to go on to the next story, which is... So we talked about the IMF working paper on markets. And again, for anybody who just joined, enabling deep negative rates to fight recessions. They're basically proposing to do these negative rates to stem off that the recessions, and maybe starting deep and for a short period of time. So that sounds like it could be, maybe people aren't expecting it and it'll just occur. Crypto Media asks, what's up with Telos? What's up? Will Telos have Rex soon? I actually really don't know if they'll have Rex soon. And even if they do, I think Telos uses somewhat of a different, they use somewhat of a different market in terms of their market making strategy for RAM. So they have kind of two markets, or I think that's the way it at least was proposed when Telos started ramping up and started their chain. So they have kind of like a centralized system that issues RAM to developers, and then they have the free market RAM. So we're going to have to see how that evolves over time to see if it'll have the same dynamics and how the Rex will be used there. But there probably isn't a huge demand for the RAM in that case, because of that role the central entity within that chain performs. So, oh, thanks, Renee. Yeah, I was definitely, I did fast as well yesterday. So I did a 24-hour fast, and feeling really good. And actually, that's a good point, and I'll come back to your question. But one thing I mentioned today in Twitter and even on the Telegram chat, and I think some people had a laugh about this stuff, but one of the things I mentioned is that this financial system that we got. I mean, there's some good people in it. Okay, I'm not saying anything. All of them are bad, but all I'm saying is, if you think about it, and shout out to my boy Max Kaiser for pointing this out, but it's like a tapeworm, and so we got to take a tapeworm analogy to the financial system, and what that means for Bitcoin and projects like EOS and Litecoin. And one of the things you have to imagine is, parasites or tapeworms or anything cancerous. As I said, I like to fast, and one of the reasons I do is, and one of the reasons why I eliminate sugar in my diet is because cancerous cells in the body love sugar. That's actually how they grow and propagate and take over the the biosphere of your system, right? And these financial systems are very similar. Some systems in them, like parasites and tapeworms, they feed off certain types of sugar that make up the system. And in this case, my hypothesis or my thought process in buying Bitcoin on a biweekly basis or even with every paycheck, no matter how small it is, we as the crypto community are essentially starving this parasite, this tapeworm. And it might take some time, and there's a long view on things. You have to take the long road on things. But over time, if people continue to stay solid and resilient in this system, in this new system that we're developing, you're going to see a similar phenomena to how when a body eliminates sugar and fast, basically starves cancer to death. It kills the cancer. And this tapeworm analogy to financial systems, it's very analogous to that. It has a very similar strategy and thought process to how you kill the parasite. And you kill it with Bitcoin because Bitcoin you can audit, it's limited, and you have proof of keys. So they can continue to buy Bitcoin in some quantities and dump and manipulate it over a period of time. But over the long haul, we know that it's going to become more difficult to do because of the beauty and how Bitcoin was designed. And the fact that 50%, did you guys know this? 50% of the Bitcoin that is in circulation since the beginning of 2018 has not actually moved. So you're seeing the dormancy. What I look at these rates like the dormancy of Bitcoin. The fact that these OG holders, some of them many years, like myself, who've just been buying, I haven't even sold any cryptos over time. That dormancy rate is increasing, and so you're seeing more and more Bitcoin being taken out of the market and proof of keys. So that's going to be interesting to see as over time this becomes more and more in the hands of OGs and hodlers, what they're going to do, because the little short-term manipulations can only work for so long. So don't get shaken out, guys. I want to just emphasize that on almost every show. It's important to show up and get your knowledge and have a strong hand, because a lot of this is an information war, and it's all just to kind of shake you out of your position or your knowledge. And you got to seek your own truth. You got to find many different sources of truth and find what is real versus what someone is saying on mainstream media, for example, because it's in their best interest to say that, or maybe they're being paid by people who have interest in maintaining the status quo. So I just want to mention that. So going to questions here, Renee asks, have you already said something about liquid dApps and their tweets to Vitalik and Dan Larimer about scaling? I did notice that there was a tweet about liquid dApps mentioning, and shout out to those guys, mentioning they had basically scaled Ethereum. And Dan Larimer actually retweeted it. And it was funny because I think it might have been a week or 2 weeks ago, Dan Larimer had actually reached out to Vitalik on Twitter and suggested that, because Vitalik had made a tweet that suggested Ethereum use Bitcoin Cash to scale their chain, which is kind of ridiculous, but it also shows the state that Ethereum is in. And I love Ethereum. Listen, I love all, we're one unit here, we're a crypto community. And that's the way we need to start thinking, because you could see what we're up against. I already mentioned at the beginning of the show what's going on in the world, and you all know what time it is. And I think Dan and Vitalik are starting to realize that. But Vitalik had mentioned he was going to reach out to Bitcoin Cash to see if they could scale it on there. But Dan Larimer, suggested maybe using EOS. And then as of a couple days ago, Liquid DAPP's team comes out with a demonstration of linking the two chains together and allowing them to talk to one another. And so what an amazing accomplishment, an achievement that was made by that team. Congrats to Liquid DAPP's team. I'm curious about the actual technology behind it, and if the Liquid DAPP system, I know they've solved the inner blockchain communication between the chains, but I'm imagining that some of the speed would still be limited due to the speed inherent in Ethereum. And so that might be the bottleneck between the two. But if anybody knows, please add that into the chat for tonight. I don't know that answer, so I don't want to give you guys false information, but that's where I still see this being somewhat of a challenge. Maybe using Ethereum for its dApps as the settlement layer, if you will. So you use EOS for the transactions when you're using an app, and then maybe use Ethereum as a settlement. Maybe that's the way it works, because Ethereum can only do like 15 transactions per second, which is nothing. So let me know what you guys think about that. But that's the information I have on that. And tribalism is still very strong, I think, in the markets, but I've seen it falling off, to be honest with you. I think, again, people are starting to realize who the big monster is in the room, and it's definitely not the people who are developing software or even using it. We are, like I said, a crypto community, and we need to start acting like one and not bashing our heads against one another, because we got a much bigger beast to battle, and it's going to take every single superpower within all these chains to come together to create a formidable force, right? So buy Bitcoin and fast on trading, become an OG in a few years. That's right, baby. Strong hand and be in motion like my boy Bitcoin Meister says, right? That's another guy who does a lot of that stuff. So shout out to him. And if you're looking for some amazing content, shout out to all the EOS OGs as well. Crypto Feez, the Crypto Type, EOS Apologist, Rezi, and everybody else who's amazing, who does amazing content. We had M Blue Crypto. He gave me a shot of hopium in the arm, obviously, with his amazing new video I think he put out yesterday on why EOS and why Block 1. So I thought that was a really cool video. If you guys are looking for something that is uplifting and just the right balance of hopium with information, I encourage you guys to take a look at M Blue Crypto's show, because that was pretty amazing that what he put together there. So with that said, let's take a look at what we got next. So we talked about tapeworm analogy and the fact that 50% of the Bitcoin and climbing hasn't even moved. We talked about the IMF paper. And one other thing, since this is kind of more of a Beyond Bitcoin show, I have been looking at this gentleman, Andrew Yang, obviously, who's very popular, it seems, in the crypto community and other communities, but hasn't received a lot of visibility in the mainstream space. And his $1,000 per month proposal for all the citizens of the United States, which sounds on paper like a very interesting solution. I would wonder, though, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this before we get more into the crypto stuff. Do you guys think that that solution has legs? Do you guys think that if you were to receive $1,000, what would that do for you? And I guess what I'm wondering about is, and it's more of an economic, maybe economic theory type question, but I'm wondering if everybody received $1,000, wouldn't that just make the cost of every good go up? in the in the market unless there was more goods produced. But assuming everything stays the same, assuming or maybe even goes down in terms of the amount of goods that are available, assuming all those things stay the same and you just give $1,000 to everybody, wouldn't that just lead to inflation in the market? I really wonder about that. And so I'm almost wondering, why haven't we seen a politician propose not a guaranteed US dollar fiat giveaway to everybody, but why haven't we seen anybody propose some kind of a guaranteed resource inheritance like Dan Larimer talks about, where you get a share in ownership of the roads you already paid for, right, with your taxes, or your water system or your electric system, all these amazing systems that we have all around us that are real systems. We have land that produces food. Why not just guarantee a percentage of that to everybody who is in the country? And that way you incentivize people to basically take ownership in that, right? Help each other, help your brother and sister to maybe raise the food, improve the roads, because you own it, right? If you own something, you're going to take more pride in it. And so I'm just wondering, like, we have the technology for it with EOS. We have other tech. We could even build it on probably even a database if it came down to it. Why haven't we seen a real proposal like that? Not this bread and circus, free money, monopoly stuff that you and I both know, based on what I just told you, is not going to work. Because if you have the same amount of goods, but you're printing more money, it doesn't really do anything but make pretend that everything is fine. Am I the crazy one, guys? I mean, I just want to know. So let me know in the chat what you think about that idea. But I thought I'd share it with you guys. That's my take on Andrew Yang. I think he has some good ideas, but I just think that this whole $1,000 proposal thing, I don't know. I'm hoping that maybe someone who really likes him, who watches this video, can maybe chat with him and give him that idea, because that's a more effective idea. It's a more equitable idea. It's a more aligned users model, right? Like we have on EOS. What better way to encourage people in the cities like Baltimore to take pride in their streets than to give people ownership in the city? I mean, that's what it should be, right? We are citizens of this country. Why not give people ownership in it, to take pride in what they own, and to give them an incentive to improve it and add more value to it, right? I mean, to me, it just, maybe I'm the crazy one. So let me know what you guys think about that. And I want to talk about some other things as well. What Bitcoin could mean in the future before we go to EOS. I'm thinking that this is a more realistic end game of where we're going, and because we're seeing a lot of this handout and circus theater with promises based on nothing. And possibly what you could see is the weight of decision making in the future coming from holders of Bitcoin and EOS and cryptocurrencies, because that'll be the only forms of wealth beyond gold and some assets left. And maybe in that case, you'll see appeals to the holders and not the central banks. So I think the value proposition changes, and along with that, transparency and auditing on spending, which is nice. And what I'm really waiting for, guys, and I think we're pretty close here, is looking for that first government that'll adopt this standard. And I think what's going to be interesting is to see how that drives innovation and improvements in that city, because of the ability to audit and hold people more accountable, because we haven't had that in history today. Everybody's been looking at Bitcoin and EOS more from an investment speculative standpoint. But what happens when you actually start using the tools and basically making people more accountable and having measured success, measured performance, right, of systems that you're designing and constructing? we don't really know that right now. We don't know where the 21 trillion or however much they just signed is even going. There's no way to know that. So all this other short-term stuff to me is just games. But that's really what the long-term, I think, vision should be for anybody who's in Bitcoin. It's this long-term game, because that's going to be really phenomenal to watch. And how does it compare to now? Is the other thing you need to ask yourself. Where we are going versus where we are now. Where today you perform labor, most of you guys do, in exchange for a currency that is based on another man's rules or another elite family's rules. They have a printing press, or a group of them do, and they print the money. And there's no real checks and balances on units of account for the country. And this actually ripples through the whole world. And so there's no auditing on the money spent itself. That could substantially change because of what I just talked about. The fact that there will be auditability on these systems. I mean, it just brings a whole another level, requires a level up in terms of what people are proposing, how they get the funding, etc. So Mr. Holmes says, in a capitalistic system, there's always going to be winners and losers. Hence, poor people will always exist. That is true. That is true. However, I think, unlike a lot of times in history, and maybe this could be completely wrong, but in a lot of times in history, people around the world did not have another option to go to in times of duress. They never had an option that they could go to that was permissionless. They never had a system that they could go to that was transparent. And they never had a system that they could go to that was truth. And you're getting an alternative to that. People are getting an alternative to that. So now it's just a question of realizing the value of it and then obtaining it and spreading that message all around the world. It might take time, but over a period of time, people will begin to understand and appreciate it, what it actually is, which is more than just the value of it itself, right? So it's phenomenal. I mean, this is amazing stuff, and including EOS, right? We can't forget about that with the powerful delegated proof of stake. So, in terms of Voice, which is this amazing platform that a lot of you guys, I know, you are excited about, as well as I. A couple things that I wanted to say about that. First of all, a lot of people are kind of down and out about the release of Voice, and obviously I don't have any insider information, but it appears, as I mentioned before, like Voice will likely coincide with maybe EOS 2.0, which, I mean, and it could even be before that, maybe 1.8 we get a demo, but I want to hold your breath on it, I think you might see something towards the end of the year for Voice, maybe coinciding with the 1.8, which is scheduled for September 23rd. But again, I wouldn't kind of circle that in as the date for when you see Voice. And the reason why I think we may not see Voice during that time, and I want to get your take on this, guys, is Voice, even though it's an amazing idea, and even though it has the AML KYC, which is awesome from a regulatory standpoint, we could argue about whether we like it or not. Let's just look at it from a product standpoint. I think, though, in light of the recent news and spotlight on things like Libra, and some of the news we've heard even as of 2 days ago, considering how the treatment of tokens are financially for people, there are some questions I have for Block 1 and for people within this community. Specifically, the question about earning Voice tokens and the dynamics in any inherent crypto market that is what it is today. Let me explain so I can distill it, and I want to get, again, your thoughts. I want to know if you guys think I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just way too into this. Maybe I'm just thinking way too much about product development, but if someone has connections with the Block One team, please share this section of the video, and I'd like to get a discussion. I'd like to actually hear from Dan Larimer about this. So Dan Larimer and Block One mentioned that voice is essentially being designed, the voice token is being designed to reward users on the voice network for creating content and driving essentially attention to the content they create, which is amazing. It sounds amazing. It is a great idea. No ifs or buts about that. And as I mentioned, they had indicated maybe higher incentives for early adopters of this platform and AML KYC for all users given rewards. Other users, perhaps advertisers, would drive the attention or the interest of the voice token. They would actually need to purchase voice tokens to advertise on the system. And so you kind of create this ecosystem of content creators and advertisers and kind of pair them together. But I guess my question is more on the user side. So picture this. You have a lady named Jane on the voice network, okay, when it first starts. She happens to be very lucky in hearing maybe from one of you guys, or maybe she herself is a crypto OG in EOS and happens to sign up for voice. So she happens to be the first of, say, 5,000 people on the voice network. And in that period of time, say within her first week, she's able to gain, get this, because of the amazing content she creates, she's able to gain 500 voice tokens that each have a par value at the beginning of 50 cents, with people loving her content. And let's say, maybe to make it more elaborate, she receives 500 voice tokens per day for the first 7 days with a par value of 50 cents per token. It stays relatively the same in that regard. And let's say that for one reason or another, the price of voice tokens plummets heavily to 25 to 50% of the price she received it for during the time she was on the platform. So I guess my question is, and I know this is not for Block One to answer right now, but it's something that is a legitimate question and a concern, is if that happens, and given the things that we've heard recently, how does a user report that income? How does a user deal with these regulatory hurdles in the United States? Maybe Block One's easy response in the beginning is what I had suggested they do, which is not releasing any tokens or income or anything to US users and just holding it in like a custodian account until the regulatory framework is properly established in the United States. Because right now, if you think about this example I just gave you, it's almost illogical to even launch a freaking token here. Because if you think about it, someone in theory, based on what I just said, a token can be created, it could have a price, it could be distributed to you as an earning, which would be a form, I guess, of income. The price could drop during the time you hold it, but in the eyes of the IRS and the regulatory agencies, they may see it as you earning income at the stated value you were given it at. And you could generate a taxable event where you owe more money, or you owe more money than you earned from from being on the network. You're gonna owe money. You're gonna have to pay the IRS and these regulatory bodies and all the lawyers and attorneys just to use the app. No, and it may not be, Mr. Holm. I mean, I agree with you, and I think in our eyes, we would love to see that logic, not income until she realizes the gain. But keep in mind, with a lot of airdrops and things like that, people were saying that It was a form of income. It was a taxable event, and how to treat it. So my question to you, or to anybody really who's designing this product or any product similar to it, is, given that situation by the regulators, are we sure that that's the strategy, that is the approach that's going to be used? Because that could be kind of screwy if you think about it. That can be kind of screwy. So if they treat it as income, I see what you're saying. If you treat it as maybe property, that's one thing. If you treat it as income, and it's income when you actually receive it, and it's that value, and the token is very volatile, or even if it's somewhat volatile, you are penalized potentially for using something like a voice, and you may have to pay more just to use the application. So, I mean, I'm not trying to sprout scare tactics. This is just legitimate questions that Block One and anybody who's designing these products needs to be able to answer. Because if you have a granny, okay, an old lady, or anybody, my mom or my sister who's using this, they don't want to deal with this stuff. How do you make it so that it's regulatory compliant, but it's not to the point where people have to hire some special tax people just to use the application? It becomes a hurdle to use the technology. And this is the kind of stuff that I'm hoping that Block One is using the money they receive, the supporting money, the seeds for the money that they have is starting the conversation in this regard. Because if you have something like a capital gains tax, and it's not an easy way for people to report, okay? First off, it's ridiculous. Second off, how do you determine what it actually is? Is it capital gains? Is it income? Is it both? I don't know. And so these are the difficult questions, I think, that need to be answered. So with that said, let's go to the chat and see what people have to say. Renee asks if I'm on Karma. I am not on Karma, unfortunately. I want to be on Karma. I asked Dallas if he had a desktop app. I'm not a fan of the mobile. I'm sorry, but the mobile GPS tracking, and I don't like to give all my information on there, so I will not be partaking in that at this time. But I've heard great things about it, and I know now he has like a way to link Facebook if you guys use that, which again, I am on Facebook, but I don't really use it and log in. But if you guys are, there's a way that you can, I guess, link the two together. But I try to stay off all that kind of stuff for reasons alleged that we don't need to get into here. So with that said, I wanted to actually give you guys, this almost sounds funny. He says, she'd have to move to Puerto Rico. I mean, that's true. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I, not trip out on, but that's what I worry about, or I wonder, is like grannies and moms and just anybody who's using this platform. Does this become a hurdle? Does this become a technology burden for a US company like Block One over a Chinese company who's doing the same thing? And I'm not getting racist. I'm not saying it's Chinese because it's Chinese, like in terms of me not liking Chinese. I love all people. You all know that, I'm from Hecho in Venice, okay? I'm made in Venice. There's all kinds of people there. So it's not about anybody in China. In fact, I've told you guys that we should organize a trip to China and all kinds of places. We should go to Africa. We should go to all kinds of places and figure out which place works best for us, where we're treated the best, and where they value people with ideas. It may be the US, but since we haven't really traveled, or since I haven't traveled, I don't really know that until I go out and explore. And if you're interested in doing that, definitely link up with me so we can get a group that goes to these places, because that's what I'm about. But having said that, if Granny or my mom or my sister or anybody in the family, anybody in the community here, right, who knows somebody, it could even be you, you guys happen to use this and you blow up on voice and you earn all these tokens, and but the price of the token goes down for some reason after you've earned the tokens. How is that treated? Is voice going to have a built-in feature for reporting these things to deal with it? Are they going to have an option on how users can get paid to maintain some stability so that they know what they're earning? These are all the types of questions I think that come up. So, not to paint FUD, but I mean, I think it's a legitimate question, and I think you guys would agree. These are the kinds of things that hopefully the talent they have at B1 is thinking about. And, I have a lot of ideas about how I'd envision maybe solving this, but, I don't work at B1, and I'm probably too crazy to anyway. But I'm hoping that someone at B1 is watching this video, and hopefully they can get someone from B1. Here's another idea. Other than Dan, to be on the Voice Telegram channel. It's been a couple months now, well, almost 2 months now, that we've heard about the release of Voice. And so I think we're at the point where there is a good amount of talent that can help out with development of Voice. And it would be nice to hear some details about how it's going to work. I know a lot of it is secret sauce, but what you want to avoid often in engineering and product development is groupthink, and maybe having only a few or a handset of people developing a product where a feature is thought to be a good idea, but maybe there's trade-offs or disadvantages that haven't been thought through. And so that's where I think the EOS community as a whole, with all the talent we have, in terms of the Double G's community, the Gang community, in terms of the Everything EOS community with Zach and Rob and the amazing community they built there with EOS Talks and even the EOS main channel. You have a lot of smart people, a lot of talent there. Why not just put it to good use and issue the ideas you're proposing and figure out if they actually stick? Because it might turn out that an idea that is perceived as awesome within the smaller product development team isn't such a good idea. And I've had that even with designs I do, and it's a much more niche thing I do. It's something I've done over a period of time, and I'll go to the client team and I'll ask and I'll propose things, and there are just things that even though the engineering team has thought through, you go to take it to the client team and you take it to a couple different types of users and they poke holes in it, and there are things that even as much as the due diligence is done before taking it to them, there are things that haven't been thought about. And when you're rapidly developing a product, that is really important. So I hope to see a little bit more engagement from someone like Larimer, or the assigned product manager who's responsible for that product. That's really what we should be, I think, seeing, rather than hoping that you're doing everything right the whole way through and then delivering a product that may not meet the all the features that are maybe required for different subsets of users. That's just my thinking, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Mr. Holm says, Trump stretched a loss out over many years, essentially paying no taxes. That is true, but Trump's in a different realm. He's a very wealthy, influential guy, and so the rules, as we know, don't apply equally amongst all the levels, and we'll just have to follow the law and try to stay compliant and work with them on the right solutions. But all I'm saying is, I think Block One and companies like Block One also need to step up and kind of provide solid evidence on solid scenarios that are going to occur with this technology, just because of inherently how they operate and what requirements there are to facilitate a technology blockchain-based ecosystem in the United States. Because if that doesn't happen, the talent is leaving. The talent is leaving. It has nothing to do with being against Donald Trump or being, thinking someone's racist or not. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with opportunity. And talent will always seek opportunity. And what's left will be what's left. So there'll be a huge brain drain, unfortunately. And, most people around here, myself included, it's easy to probably jump through their hoops that they'll have set up for people, making sure you dot all your I's and cross your T's on your filings. People like me haven't even sold cryptos for fiat. But I think after that, it's time to probably look for other options in terms of where we're going to be treated best for innovating and spending the time to create GDP, okay? Creating productivity for a country. And it may not be here, unfortunately. So it has nothing to do with Trump. It's just that's what people need to do. You need to vote with your feet. So Mr. Holmes says user stories are good at fleshing out what people are willing to pay for. Indeed. So that's my rant for that. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I wanted to, and we'll take more questions as we go, but I wanted to go into Phoenix's top 5 projects to watch for the second half of 2019. And so this is a segment I'm trying to get organized here and try to share with you guys in terms of what projects excite me. And so I'm going to see if I can try to pull some of these up for you guys and have a nice little discussion, because EOSIO is on fire, in terms of the projects that have been announced. Despite a lot of things, we are, looking pretty good right now. And so I wanted to, again, go through those with you guys and get your thoughts on what do you guys think about these types of apps that we're now seeing, okay, as part of the EOSIO ecosystem. What you guys are looking at here is the Everpedia project. This project is in beta, and it allows you to actually explore your curiosity. But for those that don't know, Everpedia is intended to be the world's encyclopedia. So you can, let's try this out. You can type something in, Dan Larimer, and there you go. It actually is. It actually looks amazing. Let's try something else. Vitalik Buterin. Wow. So this is pretty fluid. Let's take a look at this further. I'm going to go to Vitalik's page. Actually pretty impressive. So they give some related reference articles, awards and recognitions. You can see it was actually a Teal Fellowship Award winner, and his contributions and his personal life. But yeah, that's the picture's a little scary, but that's amazing that they have that ability. And I don't know let's see what this is. I guess that's supposed to be Sistine Chapel. So activity, IQ info. You can go and get your IQ, which is the token that powers the Everpedia network. And they are used to contribute content to the knowledge base. So I think you get IQ tokens for essentially creating content for this network. And you can see the list of supported exchanges is growing. So cool stuff. Let me know what you guys think about that. Have you guys tried Everpedia? Would be my question for you guys. Is that something you're looking to use? Have you even looked at it? Do you think if you have, do you think it's better than a Wikipedia? I would like to know your thoughts on that. It looks actually interface-wise pretty impressive, I gotta say. It's just not something I've personally used too much. So, but maybe we have some users in the chat. And if you are a user of it, I'd love to know how you use it, how it's worked for you, and if you've benefited from it in terms of maybe creating that decentralized, I guess, business models for yourself as a content creator. That's one thing I'm also curious about here is how's that worked. Mr. Holm says, no, not in Google search results. I'd like to know what you mean. Oh, you mean like, so if someone searches for Vitalik Vitalik on Google, Everpedia results don't show? Or please elaborate what you mean by that. Up next on the list is EVA. So some of you guys might be wondering what EVA actually is. EVA is a cooperative ride-sharing application based on a blockchain. And what it is it's basically Uber on EOSIO software. And so one of the interesting things about this platform is the ability to be a rider or driver and be an owner of a network within a local area. And their main benefits to this is the 85%. I'm trying to find if they have it here because I was looking for that. See if they have. They don't mention it here. See, I think this is where it could be a little bit better, but I thought they had a page that basically said what their value proposition would be, and essentially what they had mentioned. Oh, there it is. So I skipped it. I'm sorry, guys. I was just furiously scanning way too fast. But the gist of it is 85% of each ride. So if you're a driver in one of the pilot cities, you're getting 85% for each of your rides that you're doing, which is by far superior to something like a Uber, which Uber, you're lucky to get 50 to 60%. So Uber takes around, I think when I did research on this, and this was sometime last year or maybe a year and a half ago, this was when EOS was actually starting up, and I had done research on this because I was actually interested in developing something like this or something similar to EVA. And when I did the research, and you guys can still see the video because I created a bunch of slide decks on this stuff, during my research I found that Uber was around that 40 to 50% percentage on all the revenue for the rides that these drivers were performing. So if you had a ride that was $40, Uber would likely take probably around $15 to $20, which is a pretty high percentage that they actually skim off a driver. So EVA's looking to obviously challenge them on this, and also adding the flexible schedule, everything that you have with Uber, but giving you the ability to become a member of this grassroots movement and get discounts based on members' participation in the ecosystem. So this is something that I'm thinking I'd like to maybe even bring to Phoenix. I even mentioned it to EOS Kent out of San Diego to possibly see if he could help organize, bring this to San Diego. And I've hinted and put on Twitter, my interest in seeing other, maybe, well, I'm not a BP, but seeing like Western USA BPs help to create the grassroots movement here in the United States to bring this to select cities in the United States like New York, LA, San Diego, Phoenix, maybe in Austin. You start to get those strategic cities, where you have high amounts of population that could benefit from the service, and that alone could become a huge application on EOSIO. Now I know EVA is still in the pilot stage, but this could be a very solid use case for something like EOS. Besides the fact of giving riders a lower fare and giving drivers a higher percentage on their driving income or their driving revenue that they collect from riders, it also gives you the ability to potentially take your profile with you with whatever it is you do after that. So you think of it like this: you could be driving for EVA one day and you provide such amazing customer service, you do such a great job everybody's in love with you for what you do. And you can then take that profile and your reputation as a driver on EVA and do something else, right? But that profile and that reputation stays with you, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. But I mean, if you do it right and you're consistent about it, it could be a very good thing to have the ability to take your reputation, who you are as a person, with you, and use that for other means, other types of services that you could build on EVA even. Maybe you give tourist services on top of your ride-sharing platform. Maybe you have niche services that you add to what you do on EVA. So there's a lot of interesting things that you could just, it's just mind-blowing, right? That you could just think of that will build on top of EVA. This is just the beginning, but I think there's a huge opportunity here for a lot of the BPs in the United States to demonstrate their value. I'm not saying they aren't, but I'm just saying that I think there's different ways to show, to kind of show and demonstrate that you are. So we have a new user here. It says, I lived in Tucson a long time ago. I couldn't take that desert heat. Yeah, I feel you. It's like 115 here today, like I mentioned. So it's hot, to say the least. Mr. Holm says, friction for a user is high. The expectation is that when I search, I get relevant returns on my query. I agree with you. So I think your message is improvements to the search results and getting Everpedia to come up on at least probably the first page. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see where they are actually ranked. If you were to put in Vitalik or Dan Larimer, or really anything, where do they rank in terms of a Google page query? I know they're not on the first page, but I mean, where do they add? And maybe even tracking that would be a good way to measure their improvements to their product. And maybe it shows that they need to make investments in that area. Maybe that's just not a skill set they have per se. I'd be really curious about that. So with that said, guys, we're going to go to the next project. The next project is EOS Phoenix. Yes, guys, EOS Phoenix. I'm wondering if you guys have been aware of this project. This kind of went a little bit under the radar by some, but what EOS Phoenix is, it's a high-performance exchange built on EOSIO. It's basically a scalable and transparent platform. It's a DEX, okay, a digital exchange. So what it allows you to do is trade your EOSIO tokens and other types of assets as well. The rumor on the street is we've heard that they're going to not only trade EOS tokens, but Bitcoin, Litecoin, and possibly even Ethereum. And so the open source launch is actually coming here in a few days. It was actually supposed to be launched already. They ran into some hurdles, I was told, but within the next couple days, I think it's like 3 days, EOS Phoenix is launching. And this is exciting because EOS or Bitfinex, they have their daily volume is several $1 million, I think, their 24-hour volume. So you're looking at a huge amount of liquidity that is going to now be available for a lot of EOS projects potentially. It doesn't guarantee that the small ones are going to have liquidity, but it does provide a possible mechanism to do it. And they also hint here at some other interesting features which we should probably take a look at. So I'll do a quick run with you guys. It says a next generation of digital asset trading as a fully on-chain trading experience. EOS Phoenix facilitates a highly scalable network of peer-to-peer value exchange built around a foundation of speed, transparency, and control. And they also say here they're going to have more features that meet the demands of professional traders. So what that seems to hint to me is that, and they don't really give a lot of, I guess, details here, but what it seems to hint to me is they're adding ways to, Oh, here we go. This is what I wanted to show you guys. They're going to add ways to customize the user interface that you have. And you can switch between themes and fonts and time zones. But I also heard you're going to be able to play with the way the orders are done and play with the way your algos work on this platform as well. So in theory, this would be a cheaper way, a poor man's way, if you will, or a common man's way. You can look at it like both professional traders and your average, I guess, mom and pop traders can go on this platform and use these sophisticated tools and functions and basically build out an AI or build out a bot or algo system to trade cryptocurrencies, which is something that we haven't seen in any other exchange, to my knowledge. Maybe you guys are aware of it, but I mean, they do exist, but I'm saying this would be the first large commercially available system that enables this. And you could also see maybe even complex financial instrument creation on this. This is going to be very interesting. I think this is going unnoticed by a lot of people, and so that's why I ranked it as number 2. EOS Phoenix, decentralized exchange. Think of Ether Delta, but less quirkiness to it, with a more seamless interface and more advanced features, right, that enable some really cool stuff. So we're gonna have to take a look at that, guys, but I thought I'd mention it here. EOS Phoenix at number 2 on the watch list. So mark your calendars for that. That'll be the end of this month, and that's going to be something special to take a look at. So number 3 on the list, oh, I'm sorry, that was number 3, because we did EVA, we did Everpedia, we did EOS Phoenix, and next on the list is a project called Playdom. And this is a project I actually got a hold of during my visit out to was it San Francisco? Yeah, it was San Francisco, at the EOS Hackathon, of all places. So I was out there with the local team here in Phoenix, and we made our way out there. And what was interesting is they had a presentation on this project during the hackathon at one of the breaks, and this is basically decentralized proof of location available to anyone. And I'm going to give you guys an inside scoop here. It says here, collect signals around the world and contribute to decentralized location proofs while earning PTNX tokens. So you can actually install and start earning these now if you're interested, and this is on the Google Play platform. So I don't know if you guys are going to check that out. It might be a way to earn some income. I'm not sure if I'm going to personally do it because, again, it is a tracking type system. But if you guys do try that, let me know what you think. This is kind of how the system looks. So you can actually harvest your proof of location and get some earnings from that. And so what is it? It says here, imagine how many people would use cryptocurrencies if they could see them with their own eyes and even touch them. At Playdom, we combine location data with a lightweight and secure proof of location protocol to make this possible. Playdom allows anyone to geolocate a digital asset, cryptocurrencies, documents, images, anywhere on the map, anywhere in the world in real time. This is made possible through open, privacy-preserving, zero-knowledge proofs developed as part of the Playdom protocol. With Playdom, a digital asset can now have a fixed location in physical space. This incentivizes individuals, organizations, and large groups of people to move and interact with digital assets and each other in brand new ways. Developed by a world-class team of professionals and academics experienced in blockchain, security, mobile, and AR, Playdom gives cryptocurrencies real and more accessible to the world through a decentralized protocol based on signal harvesting and incentivized location witnessing. Playdom's protocol is interoperable and extensible with a potential to transform every industry from retail to human aid, from automotive to supply chain, and more. So if you guys want to know more about this, check out the videos. And again, if you're looking for potentially something to do, I mentioned that looked like that app is actually online on the Android store. So you could potentially install on your computer and mine some Platon for providing your location. But that just seems a little, I don't know, guys, about that one. So, but that is an interesting potential model here. So we will, you know, keep track of it, I guess. And last but not least, one of my favorites here. I'm wondering if you guys could guess what this is. This one is high fidelity. So this is number 5 on the list, high fidelity. And I brought up a page here I'm going to bring up for you guys. It says, the future of remote teamwork is coming. Request early access. And so what they're really building here, guys, is a way to collaborate like you would be in a physical office. So it says, we're making a bold, innovative virtual reality platform that's designed to help make working on a remote team more effective and fun. Remote work no longer means you have to slog through asynchronous communication and sacrifice your team's ability to collaborate and create. Fluid conversation over asynchronous communication. Unified team over siloed players. Culture over disconnection, and create collaboration over isolation. Built for performance remote teams, your team will experience all the benefits of a physical space from anywhere, from wherever they want to work. So they have a bunch of things here, but looks pretty interesting. I think, you know, the graphics are definitely getting better. They're not obviously super real life, but I mean, it is personable enough to see the different personalities and styles, so that's pretty cool. And I'm really looking forward to this. Existing tools don't solve remote collaboration challenges. The ideal picture of remote work is a pretty picture. You're fully engaged and collaborating with your team from anywhere in the world, but the reality is often very different. And you need to feel connected to do your greatest work. So that's really really cool how they have this, I guess, put together. They have some quotes in Forbes. And there's an ability to get a sneak peek. So I'll probably be signing up for this to request early access to this platform. Now, I think it'll still require probably some special software. But I think as an early adopter, it's probably worth investing in that and hopping on that train. So maybe I'll see what's available. But as of right now, I think I've been waiting for a lot of that software to come down in price. And I've also been trying to, I guess, just locally here with where I want to be and where I want to go, I've been actually trying to eliminate stuff I acquire. I've actually been giving stuff away at a lot of, mostly books. I'm not a huge material person, but I've just been trying to eliminate as much stuff as possible so I have a lighter baggage, if you will, just to be more mobile and be more agile. And that's something I encourage you guys to do as well, in addition to fasting, is figuring out exactly the things that you actually value versus a lot of the things that are, for the most part, what I've discovered of my own, I guess, test with a lot of these things are, there are things that I actually don't even use or need. So love to hear your thoughts on that. But yeah, high fidelity, that's a project that is looking interesting. It is still dependent on some, I think, scalability of the technologies, like the virtual reality technologies, to become cheaper, so more people can afford the hardware that's required to interact on a platform like high fidelity. But I think it has a lot of promise, especially with where we're going, and seeing more of this tribal model potentially take place, and more of a digital divide, unfortunately, between people who maybe understand different types of digital technologies and digital communities versus those that want to remain in the older system and not adopt digital technologies. And I think there's probably opportunity to play in both realms, right? Play in both dimensions, if you will. But I think it's important to have exposure and knowledge on how to operate in both, right? If you just dip your toes in one and just stay in that one, you're at a disadvantage. Just like staying committed to one state or one city can be very disadvantageous for a person, especially in today's market. So that's my rant for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this show, and definitely, as I mentioned, if you have questions or comments, what's going on, Rezi? Thanks for stopping by. Double G's. He says, fasting, what kind of cult is this? Man, we're trying to get healthy too, because remember what our boy Crypto Feez says, you gotta cherish your health, you gotta cherish the people around you, and just think, if you have that Lambo, or if you have that amazing, beautiful spot on an island with all the coconuts and including the ladies and all the nice things that maybe you'd like to have, none of that works without your health, right? None of it will. I mean, it probably still works, but it's just so much better to come there with your health. So the fasting is one way to do it. Fasting with, fasting in terms of your physical body, fasting in terms of even your thoughts and having introspection, and maybe just going on a hike or a run and not having any noises during that time is a way to fast also your mind and get it clear. Fasting the tapeworm, financial parasite, we talked about that today, and how we as a community can do that if we put our minds to it. It's going to take some mental energy, and it's going to take the force, okay, in Star Wars, just like a lot of those tales that we hear, those Joseph Campbell tales, there's actual meaning to them. Some might laugh and say it's a cult of some kind, but there's a lot of meanings to these things, and everybody has a superpower, and you got to remember to not get shaken out mentally because someone else is trying to use their force against you or against the community. You too have the force to remain confident in your thoughts and your beliefs on what is valuable, and for today and most nights, you guys are valuable. That's why I spend a lot of time with you guys, and I hope you value the community as well, and value, the amazing things we're creating in our realm of things. And there might be people outside this realm that maybe don't understand it, and that's okay, right? They're entitled to exist in their realm, and that'll be, and so it is. So with that said, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. If you like the content, hit the like button, consider subscribing. And with that said, I think this is Phoenix signing off. I will see you next week. Pound that like button, and remember to, be unique, have a strong hand, and don't panic. And enjoy the ride. Just remember to enjoy the adventure, because that's what it is, baby. Talk to you guys later.